to us at Chanukah. So if verse 22 we see Yeshua at Chanukah, that means the rest of his teachings in John chapter 10 were given at Chanukah. So Yeshua not only honored Chanukah, Yeshua not only observed Chanukah, Yeshua not only celebrated Chanukah, Yeshua not only guarded Chanukah, he gave some of his deepest meat on Chanukah. Everything from John verse 22 to the end of the chapter was taught by the Son of Yahweh at Chanukah. Can I hear a good amen? Amen. But guess what else? Everything from verse 21 to verse 1 was also taught at Chanukah. Because the place, the venue never changes. It tells you in the middle of the chapter where he was. But everything before verse 22 and everything after verse 22 were all delivered during the Feast of Dedication. Can I hear a good amen? It interjects where the teachings took place, but everything, I believe, from verse 1 right through verse 42 was given by Yeshua at the Feast of Rededication. Can I burst your bubble a little bit? How many don't want to be religious? They'd rather be biblically correct than be religious. All right? Ready? Here's the disappointment. I do expect a collective ah. You know about why there are 8 branches on the Chanukah plus the Shamesh being 9? Why are there 8 branches? Because there was what? When they were cleansing the temple, right? They found a little can of oil, right? And it was supposed to last for how many days? 1 day. But they lit the menorah, but after they lit the menorah, instead of the can of oil lasting for 1 day, it lasted for how many days? 8. And that's why we have the 8 branches of the Chanukah, right? Wrong. Some things die hard.
Some things don't die at all.
I would like to believe there was a little can of oil, and Yahweh was letting his light re-enter the Beit HaMikdash, and so the Maccabees found, which means the hammer, those who hammer out Yahweh's truth and fight. They found this can of oil, they dedicated the menorah and the temple and the altar back to Yahweh, away from Zeus. It was only supposed to last 1 day, but miracle, Nes Gadol Haya Sham. And that's what's written on the dreidel. You know those 4 letters on all 4 sides of the Chanukah dreidel stand for Nes, Nun, Gimel, Hey, Shin. Nes Gadol Haya Sham. The miracle of the oil that was supposed to light the menorah of the rededicated temple on Mount Moriah for 1 day lasted for 8 days, and so we spin the dreidel and we go Nes Gadol Haya Sham. I'm not buying. I'm ready to roll out Howie Mandel right now. Deal or no deal? No deal. I'm not buying. That's Bulamises. It never happened. So why do we have 8 days? I'm glad you asked, Yochanan. If there was no oil that lasted for 8 days, why do them Jews here go? Why does the menorah have 8 days? Because the Maccabees saw it as a victory, as a great military celebration, and a feast of thanksgiving, and they knew that the only Thanksgiving feast in the Bible was the festival of the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, which lasted 7 days, plus Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day closing festival, and they patterned Chanukah after the Feast of Tabernacles. That's why it's 8 days.
Yay.
P.S. They couldn't celebrate Sukkot because the Hellenists and the Greeks were in Yahweh's house. So those 3 years they couldn't celebrate Sukkot, so they turned this victory celebration into another Sukkot after they kicked Zeus and Jesus out of Yahweh's house. It's good to know the truth, right? Todah Rabbi Yahweh. And by the way, be thankful that this is Chanukah Wings. Be thankful. Because let me tell you, if you want, that's a big if. Right, Bruno? Big if. If you want, this can be a great lesson in how we are to conduct ourselves as disciples of Yahweh. We pray, we trust, He is our shield, He is our defense, He is our exceeding great reward. But while we're trusting, and while we're praying, and while we're seeking, and while we're loving our neighbor as ourselves, we obey Yeshua's admonition in Luke 22, and we buy 2 swords, 45 and an AK-47. Let's talk. How many have heard of the story of Sean Taylor of the Washington Redskins that was murdered in his home? You want the truth that the media will not tell you? Belkis Naray won't tell you? And Laurie Jennings won't tell you? You want the truth? Or some of the truth? I'm talking about Hanukkah. I'm talking about the Maccabees. As a young man, he had several indiscretions by brandishing an illegal firearm. So, he was not allowed to have a firearm. Are you with me so far? The news won't tell you this. Verify what I'm saying. Do a little homework. Go online. He was at home for the Thanksgiving weekend. His Washington Redskins had just finished playing on Thanksgiving. I believe it was one of those days. But he was home. Now the media won't tell you this, but Rabbi Moshe will, because I love you enough to prepare the whole man, not half the man. Those of you who think guns kill. So because of indiscretions as a young man, he was not allowed to have a firearm. We call that gun control. Now it's true, certain people should not have weapons. It's true. Certain people should not. So he had under his bed a machete. These 4 hoodlums came into his house, wanted to rob him blind because he was a rich man who made good, he was successful. In the middle of the night, he got up, they broke down his door, he had his girlfriend sleeping and his children, his baby, I think less than a year or 2 old, reached under the bed to defend himself, grabbed a machete, and those hoodlums saw he had a machete. The civilian, the innocent civilian, again and again and again, was unarmed because the media says that guns kill. So they disarmed that innocent civilian, and he went to pick up his machete, and they shot him. And that's what gun control does. You won't hear that. You didn't hear that on the news, did you? Now, what happened? Let's change the scenario a little bit, and I'll tie it in with Hanukkah. Let's change the scenario a little bit. Let's say he had an AK-47 under his bed, Bruno. Who would be dead today? The 4 hoodlums. Yes? The 4 hoodlums. Okay. That's the story that the media is not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you that. Now, we're not promoting violence, but we are promoting Torah. Yeshua said when you have 2 weapons, you could trust Yahweh. If you're stockpiling tanks and guns and ammunition in your house, you're not trusting Yahweh. You're an arm nut. You're a gun nut. You understand what I'm saying? Some of us don't like this. We know someone who's a victim of gun violence. Someone in our family was a victim of gun violence. Some of us in the Caribbean. We don't like this stuff. But guess what? When you have gun control, the innocent civilians are unarmed. How about Washington, D.C.? I'll tie this into Hanukkah, don't worry. How about Washington, D.C.? It's illegal to have a gun. Correct? There's a new ordinance in Washington, D.C. It is illegal for the innocent civilians to carry a weapon. Correct? Which means, who are the only ones that have the weapon? Criminals. And they interviewed some old ladies in Washington, D.C. She says, I am not giving up my gun. They can come and arrest me and put me in prison. This thing is not leaving my house. So there's a big battle now. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. So when you hear gun control, You show me the criminal that says, yes, I want to abide by the law. I want to abide by gun control legislation. I'm guilty. Here's my gun. No, the only ones who are disarmed are the Sean Taylors. Now, I can take that and multiply it 1,000,000 times. Stacy Peterson, abused, beaten. If she had a weapon, see, the firearm is a great equalizer, isn't it? Especially for a woman. Well, you're outnumbered, your strength. You don't have the strength to compete with a man who wants to do you harm. We'll tie it into Chanukah. Thank goodness the Israelites and the Jews of that day were not the wimps of the Jews today. Because if they had the same philosophy that we have, that the Jewish people have today, which is trust the police to protect you. Sean Taylor trusted the police. His girlfriend dialed 911 and no one showed up. It didn't work. Thank Yahweh that those Kohanim knew that it was not Yahweh's job to defend them. It was their job to defend themselves, and then Yahweh would make sure that he came alongside of you. Thank Yahweh that the Jews of those days do not have the philosophy of these days. Can I hear a good amen? Amen. Praise Yahweh. Because you know what? If they had that philosophy, what would be? No Hanukkah. No Feast of Dedication. No Yeshua coming to the temple. No scriptures being fulfilled. They fought. See, even today in Judaism, Hanukkah is like a celebration of victory. Amen. In Judaism, Hanukkah is a celebration of life. But see, even the Jews don't want to get too deeply into it. What are we celebrating, Mr. Rabbi? What are we celebrating? The military victory of the Jewish people over an oppressive regime. So, Yeshua didn't have that philosophy. The Maccabees didn't have that philosophy, and that's why the Jewish people are here today. Because if the Greeks had their way, the entire nation would have been Hellenized and assimilated, and there'll be no Jewish people today, and there would have been no Jewish people for Yeshua to be born as a Jew 150 years later, and he knew that, and he showed up in the temple, not just to celebrate, not just to celebrate the Feast of Rededication, but that a Jew who knows his Torah knows it is his obligation to love his neighbor, but to defend his neighbor as himself. Amen. And those who don't know think we promote violence. I hate violence. I've seen enough violence in my life to make me puke. We're not talking about violence. We're talking about the guy that comes into your bedroom at 3 in the morning. That's what we're talking about. So Hanukkah was, in its very essence, a military victory. And even in Judaism, I'll be honest, even growing up in the yeshiva in Judaism, they don't really tell you what it's about. It's about when we took up arms and we stood firm in Torah. No, they tell you miracle. And isn't that true today? Isn't that true today? Ask 9 out of 10 Jews on the street. Shaul. Ask 9 out of 10 Jews on the street. What is Hanukkah about? Ask them. Go ahead. Do your own little test. A can of oil. It was supposed to last 1 day. And it lasted 8 days. No, it's not. It's about the time you weren't wimps. It was about the time when your oppressors came to take you to the concentration camps and to put you in the gas chambers. It was a time you did not obey the oppressor and you stood up for yourself. And you refused to be Hellenized and murdered. Can I hear a good amen? Amen. If you can't say amen, say oh my. The last thing that Adolf Hitler did before he rounded up Jews, he passed sweeping gun control legislation in the Gun Control Act of 1938 to disarm the people. Joseph Stalin disarmed the Russian people and proceeded to murder 20 million. Do a little history. Do a little history. You disarm the people and then you are victims, sitting ducks of the government. And that's the brilliance of the U.S. Constitution. The government is supposed to be afraid of the people, not the people afraid of the government. Anyway, Yochanan chapter 10. Let's go through this quickly because wow. A lot of stuff. Wing it. Chanukah Wings. Chanukah Wings. Some of the stuff that Yeshua taught us here is amazing. Simply amazing. Okay, look at verse 23. He walked into Bet HaMikdash, in Shlomo's porch. Look at verse 24. The Yehudim came to him and said, "How long do you make us doubt? If you are Mashiach, tell us plainly." Yeshua answered, verse 25, he said, "I told you, you believe not. The works that I do in my Abba's name, they bear witness of me." So at Chanukah, he told the unbelieving Jewish leaders that he came to do the works of the Father. He said, "But you believe not because you are not my sheep, as I said to you. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal chayim. They will never perish. Neither shall any man snatch them out of my hand." Do you understand what Yeshua is doing on Chanukah? He's telling us he came to give us eternal chayim. On Chanukah, victory, life, light, dedication. He came to give us eternal life, and he reveals that eternal life to us and in his Chanukah message. Not only Yeshua observed Chanukah, he preached and proclaimed that he was eternal life on Chanukah. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. What else did Yeshua teach us on Chanukah? He taught the doctrine of eternal security. Look at verse 28. Oh, slow down. I'll explain myself. I give them eternal chayim. Notice. And they shall never perish. No man can snatch them out of my hand. Does this mean that a believer cannot lose their salvation? It says that they shall never perish. No man can take them out of the Father's hand. So now we can get into a doctrine over eternal security, right? First of all, the only folks who argue about eternal security are folks who are insecure. Honey, if you're pregnant and you don't know you're pregnant, you have a personal issue. You got a problem. How many would agree with that? Every woman who ever bore a child knew when she was pregnant. So I had people come to me all the time. "Well, boy, I'm worried right now." You are? "I don't know if I'm saved." I say, "You're not."